She arrived in Paris, and the world stopped. Literally. The flashing cameras, the murmurs in the crowd, the hushed whispers of fashion insiders. It all came to a standstill as Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, stepped onto the red carpet in an all-white ensemble that screamed elegance, defiance, and sophistication. But what happened next shocked everyone. Even seasoned journalists who had covered countless red carpet events paused, unsure if they had seen what they thought they saw. Anna Wintour, the queen of fashion herself, moved forward as if to greet Meghan. And then she stopped. She refused the hug. The moment lingered like a freeze frame in time, a refusal that was felt in the stomachs of everyone present. Eyes widened. Cameras clicked faster. Phones recorded every micro-expression. And the question on everyone's mind was the same. Why? Why would Anna Wintour, a woman known for her icy composure and impeccable social radar, refuse an embrace from the Duchess of Sussex? Was it a slight, a message, or something far more calculated? The fashion world thrives on gestures, subtle power plays, and unspoken rules. A hug, or the denial of one, is never just a hug. It is a statement. And in this case, the statement could reverberate far beyond the glittering corridors of Paris Fashion Week. Meghan, standing tall in her white Balenciaga ensemble, radiated calm, but inside, a storm was brewing. Could the Duchess maintain her composure while being publicly snubbed by the most influential figure in fashion? Or would this be a turning point that would alter her trajectory in the industry forever? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. To understand the magnitude of this moment, you need to understand Paris Fashion Week. It's not just about the clothes. It's about power, influence, alliances, rivalries. The models walking down the runway are merely players in a much larger game, where every glance, gesture, and whispered word carries weight. In that world, Anna Wintour is an empress. Her approval can catapult careers. Her disapproval can quietly destroy them. And Meghan Markle, despite her global fame, has always been an outsider here. A royal who married into the public eye, a woman scrutinized for every decision, every smile, every outfit. Now, in the heart of Paris, that outsider status collided with the unyielding force of fashion royalty. But let's rewind a bit. Before the cameras, before the flashing lights, there was preparation. Meghan's choice of an all-white Balenciaga ensemble was no accident. White symbolizes purity, renewal, and sometimes defiance. Fashion experts whispered that the cut, the structure, even the angle of the shoulders conveyed a message. I am here, I am unshakable, and I demand to be seen. She paired it with understated jewelry, letting her presence, not her accessories, dominate the room. And yet, despite this meticulous preparation, the biggest test was not the paparazzi, not the audience, not even the meticulous runway designers. It was Anna Wintour. One hug, one gesture, one acknowledgement, or the lack thereof, could define the evening. When Meghan approached, the world held its breath. Anna Wintour's signature sunglasses concealed her gaze, her face unreadable. For a fraction of a second, the tension was almost unbearable. And then, the refusal, the subtle step back, the stiffening of posture, the barely perceptible shake of the head. The cameras caught every detail, Meghan's brief pause, a flicker of surprise, and then the mask of poise returned. But the air had shifted. Something invisible, something electric, had entered the room. The fashion insiders, who are usually impeccably composed, exchanged quick glances. A few whispered under their breath. Social media, which never sleeps, exploded with speculation. Was this a personal slight, a professional power move, or something even deeper? For Meghan, every public appearance is a balancing act. She is constantly navigating the expectations of royalty, media scrutiny, public opinion, and now, the opaque dynamics of the fashion elite. A misstep could dominate headlines for weeks. But she had learned to master the art of the public smile, the controlled posture, the unflappable demeanor. This was not her first test under the gaze of global attention, but it might have been the most telling. Because in that single act, the denial of a hug, lay a story that no one outside the room could fully comprehend. It was about status, influence, and perhaps old resentments that have been simmering quietly behind the couture curtains. And then there were the whispers. Rumors began circulating almost immediately. Backstage, it was said that Anna had personal reservations about Meghan. Some suggested professional envy. Others hinted at deeper, long-standing tensions between the royal family and the fashion elite. Sources close to the event claimed that Anna had previously expressed dissatisfaction with Meghan's influence over certain fashion circles, subtly undermining her presence at key moments. These were unconfirmed claims, but in the world of Paris Fashion Week, unconfirmed is often enough. Every gesture is scrutinized, every glance analyzed, every decision interpreted. And the refusal of that hug became a symbol, a spark that ignited discussions far beyond the walls of the Balenciaga show. But it wasn't just Anna Wintour who was watching. Other celebrities, designers, and fashion insiders took mental notes. Every movement Meghan made was cataloged, every reaction measured. Allies and detractors alike considered what this would mean for her future engagements, collaborations, and influence. In the world of high fashion, perception is reality. The narrative had already begun to form. Meghan Markle, publicly snubbed by the ultimate fashion authority. It was a headline waiting to happen, a story that could dominate discussions from Paris to New York to London. And Meghan, ever the strategist, had to decide her next move carefully. As the night unfolded, Meghan's composure never faltered. She continued to interact with other designers and attendees, each engagement carefully measured. The flashes of cameras continued, capturing smiles, gestures, and subtle expressions. But beneath the surface, the incident with Anna Wintour lingered. Insiders whispered about private exchanges, subtle power moves, and the invisible currents that guide Fashion Week politics. The refusal of a hug, seemingly small in the moment, had become a focal point for speculation, gossip, and intrigue. For viewers around the world, it was more than a social snub. It was a glimpse into the hidden machinations of elite culture, the delicate balance of respect and rivalry, and the unspoken rules that govern influence at the highest levels. And yet, despite the tension, Meghan's aura remained unshaken. She moved with grace, her presence commanding attention, her eyes reflecting awareness and strategy. The room, buzzing with speculation, seemed to hold its breath each time she shifted her gaze or extended her hand to someone else. It was a chess game played in real time, where every smile, every handshake, and every glance could alter the outcome. And while Anna Wintour's refusal had taken center stage, the story was far from over. The night promised more surprises, more subtle confrontations, and moments that would test Meghan's composure in ways the public would never fully see. But what does this incident truly signify? Is it personal, professional, or a combination of both? And how will Meghan navigate the complex web of influence, power, and perception that defines not only Paris Fashion Week, but the broader intersection of royalty, celebrity, and fashion? The answers are hidden in the moments that followed, in whispered conversations, in subtle gestures, and in decisions made behind closed doors. For now, the world watches, waiting to see how the Duchess of Sussex will respond to one of the most public snubs of her career. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. She appeared on the Paris runway steps like a vision, white silk gliding across the marble floor, sunlight catching on subtle folds, every movement deliberate, every gesture intentional. Cameras swarmed. Reporters leaned forward. The crowd's murmur crescendoed into whispers of awe. This wasn't just an entrance. It was a statement. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, had arrived at the Balenciaga Womenswear Spring-Summer 2026 show, and the world could barely keep its focus off her. From the moment her sleek limousine eased to a stop at the entrance, tension vibrated in the air like electricity. Paparazzi cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every micro-expression. Flashbulbs illuminated the Duchess's calm poise, her smile that was measured yet authentic, the tilt of her head, as if acknowledging the world but not bowing to it. She was a paradox, royal yet approachable, fashionable yet self-contained, commanding attention without demanding it. Her all-white ensemble wasn't merely a fashion choice, it was a declaration. White, in fashion circles, speaks to rebirth, to new beginnings, and in Meghan's case, subtle defiance. The cut of the Balenciaga gown emphasized strength, structured shoulders, fitted waist, flowing lines that gave her an aura of authority. Jewelry was minimal, just a few delicate pieces, a nod to sophistication without ostentation. Every detail whispered, "I am here. I am seen. I will not be ignored." And yet, despite the impeccable styling, all eyes weren't on the dress. They were on her, on the woman who had walked away from the royal spotlight only to return in a blaze of public attention. The audience reacted almost instinctively. Gasps, murmurs. A few people unconsciously leaned forward to get a better look. The fashion elite, accustomed to being unimpressed, exchanged quick glances. Some smiled politely. Others, caught off guard, simply froze. Every movement Meghan made was analyzed, catalogued, and shared among insiders via silent nods or whispers. Every step was calculated, yet somehow effortless. As she stepped onto the red carpet leading into the venue, the atmosphere shifted. Meghan's presence wasn't just noticed, it commanded the room. Security personnel subtly adjusted their positions to ensure her path was unobstructed, while stylists and publicists hovered nearby, ready for every eventuality. Cameras focused, lights flashed, and yet through it all, the Duchess maintained a composed elegance. Her smile never wavered, but beneath the serene exterior, there was awareness, a keen understanding that tonight, every glance, every gesture would be dissected, commented on, and possibly judged. Paris Fashion Week is no ordinary event. It is the apex of fashion influence, a gathering of the world's most powerful designers, journalists, and tastemakers. And here, reputation is currency. Every subtle nod or whisper, every gesture of recognition or denial, can shift alliances and power balances. For Meghan, stepping into this environment was both a personal and professional challenge. She was royalty, yes, but she was also a celebrity, a public figure scrutinized not only for her style, but for her very existence. One misstep could dominate headlines, ripple across social media, and potentially redefine her standing within these elite circles. As Meghan approached the venue entrance, her eyes scanned the crowd. She acknowledged a few photographers with a subtle tilt of the head, a nod of recognition. She offered brief smiles to journalists she knew would be writing the evening's stories. But she avoided lingering, her focus seemingly on a single point ahead, the threshold where she would encounter the most important figure of the night, Anna Wintour. Even before the two women's paths crossed, whispers began circulating among those standing nearby. Some speculated about previous encounters between Meghan and Wintour. Others recalled subtle tensions at earlier events. Fashion insiders, accustomed to reading every nuance, recognized the potential significance of this moment. A hug, or the denial of one, could carry implications that extended beyond the runway, shaping alliances, influencing perception, and perhaps even altering the trajectory of Meghan's public image. And then it happened. The moment that would dominate discussions, articles, and social media commentary for weeks. As Meghan reached Anna Wintour, poised to extend a greeting, the queen of fashion's signature sunglasses concealed her gaze. Her face was unreadable, her posture deliberate. There was a beat of silence, a fraction of a second where the world seemed to pause. Cameras clicked, flashes illuminated, and the anticipation was almost unbearable. And then Anna Wintour refused the hug. A subtle step back, a slight stiffening of the shoulders, a barely perceptible shake of the head. The gesture was minimal, almost imperceptible to the casual observer, yet monumental in impact. Meghan paused, briefly taken aback. Her eyes flickered, perhaps registering surprise, before her practiced composure returned. She smiled politely, continued with her greeting, but the room had already felt the shift. Something intangible yet powerful had moved between them, a ripple of tension that extended beyond the immediate interaction. The reaction was instantaneous. Journalists whispered into microphones, live streams captured every nuance, and social media erupted within seconds. Observers debated endlessly. Was it a personal slight? A professional power move? Or was it an unspoken message, a statement delivered without words, but with perfect clarity? In the world of fashion, gestures are never just gestures. They are statements of authority, markers of status, and sometimes subtle acts of rivalry. Meghan, ever the strategist, maintained her outward poise. Her composure never faltered. She continued to navigate the venue with the grace that had become her hallmark. But beneath the serene exterior, the tension remained. The refusal of a hug, minor in some contexts, became a public spectacle with private ramifications. It was not just about a greeting, it was about recognition, influence, and control. Anna Wintour's subtle rejection communicated volumes without uttering a single word. And in that charged atmosphere, Meghan's next moves would be critical. While cameras captured the surface, the real drama was happening in whispers and glances. Backstage, insiders murmured about previous tensions, subtle rivalries, and unspoken rules that govern high fashion. Some claimed that Wintour had long-standing reservations about Meghan's influence, viewing the Duchess as an outsider whose celebrity status threatened to overshadow established networks. Others suggested envy, the kind that arises when someone who is technically an outsider wields undeniable charisma and attention. These were unverified claims, but in Paris Fashion Week circles, rumor can be as powerful as fact. Despite the pressure, Meghan's interactions with other attendees were carefully orchestrated. She acknowledged designers, exchanged pleasantries with journalists, and floated through the crowd with a fluidity that suggested both confidence and awareness. Every nod, every handshake, every smile was intentional, a calculated step in navigating a world where every small action can ripple into significant consequences. And while the refusal from Anna Wintour was the event's focal point, Meghan's measured response demonstrated her resilience. She was aware of the cameras, the whispers, and the speculation, but she chose control over reaction. As the night continued, Meghan's presence dominated discussions. The crowd debated the implications of the snub, dissected her responses, and speculated about future interactions. Social media exploded with commentary. Some praised Meghan's poise, others criticized her position, and all speculated about the underlying reasons for Wintour's behavior. The incident transcended fashion. It became a case study in power, perception, and the delicate balancing act required of someone who is both royal and celebrity. Observers noted every subtle detail: the tilt of Meghan's head, the micro-expressions in her eyes, the calm steadiness of her posture. These small gestures revealed not weakness, but awareness and adaptability. Meghan understood the stakes. Every movement mattered. Every reaction was noted. And in the intricate dance of elite social dynamics, she was playing her part with precision, even as one of the most influential figures in fashion had publicly declined her overture. Yet, even with the poise and strategic awareness, the snub left questions lingering. Was this a single isolated gesture, or part of a larger tension between Meghan and the fashion establishment? How would this affect her relationships with designers, celebrities, and media personalities in the months to come? And most importantly, how would Meghan herself internalize this moment? The answers were not visible to the public, hidden beneath layers of diplomacy, strategy, and careful image management. As the evening wore on, Meghan's aura never wavered. She moved confidently, her white ensemble flowing behind her like a statement of both elegance and power. Cameras continued to capture her every motion, but now, the focus was also on her response to the snub, the resilience, the strategic poise, the unspoken message that she would not be diminished by a single gesture. Backstage, conversations buzzed with speculation. Designers whispered about potential alliances, journalists debated motives, and photographers reviewed their shots to capture every nuance of the encounter. The refusal of a hug had become more than a simple act. It was a symbol, a spark that ignited discussion far beyond the venue walls. And for Meghan, it was both a challenge and an opportunity, a test of composure under pressure, and a chance to demonstrate the resilience and intelligence that had become her signature. And yet, despite the outward calm, Meghan knew that the night was far from over. The dynamics of Paris Fashion Week are fluid, unpredictable, and often unforgiving. One misstep can shift the entire narrative. But Meghan was prepared. She had navigated scrutiny before, faced public criticism, and maintained her composure under the harshest of lights. This night, however, would reveal whether her poise could withstand one of the most public and subtle rebukes she had ever faced. As the lights dimmed and the show began, the energy in the room shifted. Models took the runway, designers watched anxiously, and the audience murmured in anticipation. Yet, the memory of that brief but powerful interaction between Meghan and Anna Wintour lingered, an invisible thread running through every exchange, every whispered conversation, and every camera lens. It was a reminder that in this world, power and influence are often conveyed not in words, but in gestures, and one hug, or the refusal of it, can change everything. But what Meghan didn't know yet, and what the world would soon learn, was that this was only the beginning. The ripples of that refusal would spread far beyond the red carpet, influencing alliances, shifting perceptions, and setting the stage for a series of events that would shock even the most seasoned observers. And in the shadows of Paris Fashion Week, behind the lights and the cameras, a drama was unfolding that no one outside the room would be able to fully comprehend. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Paris Fashion Week is more than sequins, couture gowns, and flashing cameras. It's a living ecosystem of power, influence, and unspoken hierarchies. Every gesture, every glance, every whispered word carries weight. For those outside the inner circle, it appears glamorous, even playful. For insiders, it's a battlefield where reputation is currency, alliances are fragile, and a single misstep can echo across the industry for years. And this is exactly the stage where Meghan Markle had stepped. Not as a designer, not as a model, but as a royal celebrity navigating a world both familiar and utterly alien. The first thing to understand about this ecosystem is hierarchy. At the top sits a small circle of gatekeepers, editors, designers, and elite socialites who hold the keys to the most coveted opportunities. Anna Wintour, with her impeccable fashion judgment and near-absolute authority, is the undisputed monarch of this circle. Her approval opens doors to editorial spreads, exclusive collaborations, and front-row privileges. Her disapproval, conveyed in the slightest flicker of expression, can quietly marginalize even the most promising talent. To outsiders, her refusal of a hug might seem like a minor social slight. To insiders, it's a signal, a carefully calibrated gesture that conveys meaning without words. Meghan, for all her celebrity clout and royal pedigree, was entering a world where influence is measured not by fame, but by familiarity, consistency, and subtle power plays. The models, photographers, and stylists floating around the venue have spent years, or even decades, learning to read these micro-expressions. A nod, a hand placed just so, a carefully positioned pose can signify inclusion or exclusion. Meghan's presence challenged the status quo. She brought attention and media coverage that could boost brands overnight. Yet she also represented unpredictability, a variable that traditional insiders often find unsettling. The tension between novelty and authority is palpable in fashion circles. Designers crave visibility and buzz, yet they also crave approval from gatekeepers like Wintour. Celebrities, like Meghan, can provide the former in abundance, but the latter is earned over years of networking, alliances, and subtle signaling. One wrong move, one perceived overstep, and the delicate balance can tip. And tonight, as Meghan arrived in her striking white ensemble, that balance teetered. The cameras loved her. The media adored her. But the question remained, would the inner circle of fashion elites accept her, or would her presence be treated as an intrusion? Inside the venue, the hierarchy was visible in subtle ways. Front row seats, often reserved for designers, editors, and influential celebrities, are carefully orchestrated. The placement of a single chair can signal approval or disapproval. Designers whisper instructions to their assistants about who should be positioned where. Photographers angle themselves not just to capture beauty, but to document these hierarchies in action. And at the center of all this sits Anna Wintour, her gaze sweeping across the room like a hawk. Her sunglasses may hide her eyes, but her influence is unmistakable. Every person in that room, from A-list models to socialites, understands the implicit rules. Approval is currency, and gestures, even small ones, carry monumental weight. Meghan's challenge, then, was navigating this intricate ecosystem while maintaining her poise. She had to consider every movement, which designers to greet, which photographers to acknowledge, how to respond to whispers and glances. Each choice was a potential signal, interpreted by people who could either support or undermine her. In essence, she was playing a complex game of chess in real time, surrounded by individuals whose entire lives revolve around influence, perception, and control. The refusal of a hug from Anna Wintour amplified this tension exponentially. Within this ecosystem, the denial was more than a personal slight. It was a public signal. To insiders, it suggested skepticism, disapproval, or perhaps a reminder that Meghan, despite her fame, was still an outsider. For Meghan, it was a test. Could she maintain composure while being subtly rebuffed by the most powerful woman in the room? Could she navigate the nuances of influence and authority without misstepping, while thousands of cameras recorded every second? Observers at Paris Fashion Week are trained to notice contradictions. They analyze every smile for authenticity, every handshake for intent, and every pose for confidence or insecurity. Meghan's white ensemble, poised demeanor, and carefully measured smile were all noted as signals of strength. Yet, in the same breath, insiders whispered about the micro-tension visible in her eyes, the subtle pause before responding, and the controlled but deliberate movements of her hands. These small details became points of speculation. Was Meghan intimidated, strategic, calm under pressure, or calculating? The answers mattered because in this world, perception is everything. But influence in fashion is not solely about individuals. It's about networks. Each attendee carries a web of connections: designers, stylists, editors, socialites, and journalists. These networks overlap, intersect, and sometimes collide, creating a dense lattice of power. Meghan's presence disrupted the lattice. She was connected to royalty, celebrity culture, and international media, but she lacked the deep-rooted connections that long-time insiders rely upon. That gap in network influence meant she had to rely on strategy, poise, and charm to navigate the social terrain. One misstep, one misread signal, and the consequences could ripple across her professional and social life for months. Furthermore, the stakes of this specific event were heightened because Balenciaga is not just any designer. Its runway shows attract the creme de la creme of the fashion world. Sitting front row is a marker of status. Engaging with designers is a measure of influence. The slightest misalignment in behavior can be magnified, dissected, and remembered for years. In this environment, Meghan's every choice was both a personal statement and a public performance, a dance between authenticity and strategic awareness. Even beyond the personal and professional implications, there is the cultural weight of the moment. Meghan represents a blending of worlds: American celebrity culture, British royalty, and now European fashion influence. Her presence challenges conventions. For centuries, the inner circles of fashion have valued tradition, pedigree, and insider status. Meghan, with her global platform and unorthodox path, is both celebrated and scrutinized. Her arrival at Paris Fashion Week was therefore not just about attending a show. It was a collision of worlds, a subtle challenge to established hierarchies, and a test of how much influence fame can carry when confronted with centuries-old power structures. Inside the venue, this dynamic played out in real time. Designers whispered, journalists noted, photographers angled for the perfect shot. Every actor in this complex system responded to the disruption Meghan's presence caused. And at the center of it all, Anna Wintour remained the ultimate arbiter. Her refusal of a hug wasn't just a personal preference. It was a signal to the room. A message that hierarchies matter, that influence is earned, and that no amount of fame can bypass the subtleties of insider status. For Meghan, understanding this landscape was crucial. She had to navigate carefully, balancing her public persona with the strategic considerations of elite fashion culture. Every nod, every smile, every acknowledgement became a calculated move, part of a broader strategy to maintain influence and poise. Her challenge was compounded by the instantaneous nature of modern media. In the era of live feeds, instant social media, and viral news cycles, a single moment could dominate global discussion within minutes. And yet, despite the complexities, Meghan's entrance and the subsequent refusal of a hug demonstrated both awareness and resilience. She did not retreat. She did not falter. She acknowledged the room, navigated the subtle dynamics, and continued to assert her presence with grace. For those watching, it was a masterclass in poise under pressure. For insiders, it was a disruption that required careful observation and analysis. For the broader public, it became a captivating story of power, influence, and the unseen forces that govern elite social circles. The power dynamics of Paris Fashion Week, therefore, cannot be overstated. It is a world where influence, hierarchy, and perception intersect, often invisibly, yet with palpable effects. Meghan Markle, by stepping into this arena, challenged conventions, disrupted expectations, and forced a re-evaluation of what fame, status, and influence mean in a world dominated by centuries-old hierarchies. And while the cameras captured only the surface, the undercurrents, the alliances, rivalries, and power plays, shaped the evening in ways that only insiders could fully appreciate. But as the lights dimmed and the first models appeared on the runway, one question lingered in the air. Could Meghan successfully navigate this intricate lattice of influence without losing ground? Or would the subtle rebukes, hidden tensions, and unspoken hierarchies leave her exposed, vulnerable, and at the mercy of an unforgiving elite? And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Backstage at Paris Fashion Week, the atmosphere is always electric, but on this particular evening, it was charged with an intensity that even seasoned insiders couldn't ignore. The hum of conversation, the shuffle of assistants, the soft click of cameras being adjusted. All these background sounds created a pulse that seemed almost alive. In that space, behind the velvet ropes and the polished walls, the real story of the night was unfolding, far from the eyes of the public and the media frenzy outside. This is where whispers turn into speculation, and speculation into narratives that can define careers. And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle had stepped into a vortex she may not have fully anticipated. Backstage is a world unto itself, a carefully choreographed ecosystem where power, influence, and subtle gestures dictate the flow of events. Designers and stylists hustle to ensure models are runway ready. Photographers adjust lenses for the perfect shot, and PR teams strategically position celebrities in a dance that appears seamless to outsiders but is meticulously planned behind the scenes. In this environment, even the smallest gestures are noted, dissected, and interpreted. A raised eyebrow, a brief glance, or a hesitant step can ripple through the network of insiders like a shockwave. And tonight, all eyes were on Meghan. Whispers began almost immediately after the moment with Anna Wintour. Observers leaned in close to exchange theories. Did you see that? She refused the hug. I think it was intentional. There's history there, something no one is talking about. These murmurs were more than idle gossip. They were a method of processing, of making sense of power dynamics that most outsiders could never understand. Every whisper was a data point. Every glance a confirmation of what insiders already suspected, that Meghan's presence disrupted the usual flow, challenged established norms, and threatened to reshape the subtle hierarchies of the event. Some insiders speculated about past encounters between Meghan and Anna. Stories circulated about previous events, where Meghan's rising influence and the media attention she commanded may have caused discomfort among the old guard. While no one would openly challenge Wintour, murmurs suggested that she viewed Meghan as an unpredictable variable, a person whose fame could amplify or destabilize established networks. Backstage, these conversations happened quietly, behind closed doors, in hushed tones that conveyed the weight of centuries-old power structures clashing with modern celebrity culture. And then there were the assistants, stylists, and staff. Those who often see the backstage world more clearly than anyone else. They noticed micro-expressions, slight hesitations, subtle gestures of recognition or avoidance. A designer adjusted a dress with extra care, conscious of Meghan's movements. An assistant whispered into a phone, likely updating someone miles away about the unfolding scenario. Every action, however small, was part of a ripple effect that extended beyond the walls of the venue. In that charged environment, Meghan's every move was not just observed, it was interpreted, analyzed, and cataloged for future reference. Even the models, who were trained to walk the runway without emotion, noticed the tension. Their routines, usually rigid and rehearsed, carried an added layer of awareness. As they prepared backstage, some glanced discreetly toward Meghan, noting the elegance of her posture, the controlled smile, and the subtle aura of authority she exuded. Others whispered about the snub, debating what it might signify for her presence in future fashion events. In this world, even those not in positions of power understand the weight of perception. A gesture denied to one person can serve as a cautionary tale to everyone else. and whispers spread beyond individuals to entire groups. Designers exchanged subtle nods. PR teams consulted quietly, strategizing how best to position their celebrities in relation to Meghan. Photographers adjusted angles, anticipating where the most significant reactions might occur. Every element of the environment was attuned to the subtle tension between the Duchess of Sussex and Anna Wintour. For those in the know, it was a spectacle not just of fashion but of influence, control, and social maneuvering at its finest. Backstage, rumors took on a life of their own. Some claimed that Anna had expressed discomfort with Meghan's prominence in previous events, suggesting that the Duchess's fame might overshadow designers, editors, or other influential figures. Others whispered about envy, the kind that arises when someone from outside the inner circle wields undeniable presence and attention. And then there were more dramatic theories, whispers of personal grievances, alleged misunderstandings, or calculated power plays designed to remind everyone of the hierarchy. Whether true or exaggerated, these narratives shaped the energy of the room, influencing how every interaction was perceived and conducted. Meghan, for her part, remained poised. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in the subtle cues and positioning herself accordingly. Every step was deliberate, every gesture measured. Unlike some who might have faltered under the weight of such scrutiny, she moved with confidence, aware of the intricate social lattice she was navigating. Yet, even with this poise, she couldn't ignore the undercurrents. The quick glances, the whispered conversations, the subtle recalibrations of attention that seemed to orbit around her. The tension was amplified by the duality of Meghan's presence. On one hand, she brought prestige, media coverage, and public fascination, valuable commodities in the fashion world. On the other hand, she was an outsider, a disruptor, someone who challenged the traditional metrics of influence. The insiders understood this complexity intuitively, and their reactions reflected both admiration and apprehension. Every whisper backstage served as a reminder that power is fragile, influence is contextual, and perception is paramount. Amid this, a few key players emerged, their reactions shaping the narrative before it even reached the public eye. Designers and stylists who had long-standing relationships with Wintour took subtle notes, assessing how Meghan's presence might affect their own positioning. PR representatives, aware of the media storm that was already brewing, prepared contingency plans for interviews, social media posts, and messaging that could leverage the intrigue without escalating tension. Even the technical crew, the lighting and sound teams, felt the electric charge of the room, as if the unspoken drama had permeated every corner. And then, there were the moments that no one captured on camera. A brief pause as Meghan spoke with a designer, a subtle tilt of her head acknowledging someone in the back, a hand resting lightly on a model's shoulder. These gestures, seemingly minor, carried layers of meaning in a world attuned to nuance. Observers backstage, trained to read such signals, interpreted them as strategic, as the Duchess asserting her presence and navigating a space that could be as treacherous as it was glamorous. In these whispers, rumors, and small gestures, the real story of the night was unfolding. Meghan's interaction with Anna Wintour, combined with the reactions of those around her, created a narrative that extended far beyond fashion. It was about influence, hierarchy, and the delicate dance between public persona and private power. Backstage, the walls seemed to hum with speculation. Who was aligning with whom, which relationships were shifting, and what strategies were being recalculated in real time. And yet, for all the whispers and analyses, there was an element of unpredictability. Meghan's presence had introduced variables that could not be fully anticipated. Her charisma, poise, and media savviness meant that responses from insiders could backfire if misjudged. A dismissive comment could be spun into a headline. A subtle gesture could be interpreted as respect or submission, and alliances could shift in minutes. The backstage ecosystem, though meticulously organized, was also delicate, and Meghan's entry had set a series of subtle shocks into motion. As the show's start time approached, the backstage energy reached a crescendo. Models lined up, designers made final adjustments, and assistants hustled to ensure every detail was perfect. Amid this orchestrated chaos, the whispers continued. Observers exchanged glances, repeated overheard statements, and interpreted the smallest micro-expressions as signs of larger dynamics. The refusal of a hug from Anna Wintour remained the central topic, but it was now intertwined with speculation about Meghan's strategy, her relationships with key players, and the potential consequences for future events. Backstage whispers, by their nature, are both revealing and misleading. They convey truths, half-truths, and exaggerations, creating a complex web of perception. For Meghan, the challenge was to navigate this web without allowing it to dictate her behavior. She had to remain composed, strategic, and self-aware while managing the scrutiny of insiders and the inevitable public dissemination of the night's drama. And in doing so, she demonstrated a skill that few could master: the ability to move through power structures with grace, even when those structures are subtly hostile. And as the final models lined up and the lights dimmed for the runway, those backstage whispers reached a critical mass. The stories, speculations, and subtle power plays that had begun as murmurs were now shaping the environment in real time. Every actor, from designer to assistant, from journalist to stylist, was attuned to the tension. And in the eye of this storm stood Meghan, poised, calm, and ready to step into a world that had just revealed its first true test of her influence, strategy, and resilience. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It was the moment the entire fashion world had been anticipating. Cameras focused, flashes burst, and a hush seemed to fall across the room as Meghan Markle approached Anna Wintour. Every step felt magnified, every breath exaggerated, as if time itself had slowed. This wasn't just another greeting at a high-profile event. It was a collision of two powerful worlds: the meticulously controlled empire of fashion authority and the globally recognized persona of a modern-day royal celebrity. The audience, both present and online, held its collective breath. Meghan's white Balenciaga ensemble reflected the spotlight like liquid, each fold and contour emphasizing her elegance, her presence, her poise. The ensemble was intentionally understated yet commanding, a masterclass in strategic wardrobe choice. Everything about her appearance signaled readiness, control, and awareness. And yet, in that moment, all attention shifted to one question: how would Anna Wintour respond? Would the queen of fashion extend her signature, imperious acknowledgement? Or would she let the unspoken tension linger, making the room, and the world, wait for judgment? For insiders, this moment carried layers of significance. Anna Wintour is not merely an editor. She is an arbiter of taste, influence, and hierarchy. A handshake, a smile, or a hug can either endorse or quietly dismiss a person's place in the fashion ecosystem. Every gesture is calculated, and every refusal carries meaning. Observers knew that the slightest misstep could be interpreted as weakness, overconfidence, or audacity. And in this case, the stakes were monumental. Meghan extended her hand, offering a polite, gracious greeting. Her posture was confident yet respectful, her smile warm but controlled. The Duchess of Sussex had mastered the art of public composure, but this situation demanded more than mere poise. It demanded strategic navigation of centuries-old power structures, all while being broadcast to millions. The flashbulbs seemed to freeze the moment, capturing every micro-expression, every subtle shift in balance, every barely perceptible reaction. Then it happened. Anna Wintour stepped forward, but not forward enough. She paused, her sunglasses concealing her eyes, her face unreadable. And in that fraction of a second, she refused the embrace. A subtle step back, the stiffening of shoulders, the slightest shake of the head, an imperceptible gesture to some, but a seismic event in the world of high fashion. The room felt the shift immediately. Gasps, whispered conjecture, and the soft clicking of cameras filled the air, capturing the drama for the record books. For Meghan, the pause was noticeable. Her eyes flickered for a brief moment, registering the refusal, before her practiced composure returned. She maintained her smile, nodded politely, and continued her greeting with measured words. Yet even as she moved on, the impact lingered. The refusal was a public declaration, a nonverbal statement that resonated far beyond the immediate interaction. It spoke of authority, of control, and of unspoken hierarchies that govern this rarefied world. Observers backstage, those who see the subtleties invisible to the public eye, took note instantly. Designers, stylists, and assistants whispered to one another, analyzing every detail. Did you see that? It's deliberate. There's history here, but I don't think anyone outside this room knows the full story. These whispers spread through the venue like wildfire, transforming the moment from a personal interaction into a symbolic event with far-reaching implications. Even social media, which was already alive with speculation, erupted in real time. Screens lit up with instant reactions, GIFs, clips, and slow-motion analyses. Influencers dissected the body language, fashion commentators debated the intent, and fans speculated wildly about hidden tensions. What might have been a minor social slight became a viral spectacle, a story that transcended fashion and entered the realm of cultural commentary. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the world itself paused, collectively trying to decipher the meaning of a single, subtle gesture. But the refusal was not merely a social slight. It was a lesson in power dynamics. In the fashion world, recognition is granted selectively. Influence is measured in subtle gestures, and even those with immense fame must navigate carefully. By stepping back, Anna Wintour communicated authority, reminding everyone present that status and hierarchy cannot be circumvented simply by celebrity or notoriety. To the untrained eye, it was a small act. To insiders, it was a masterful display of control, a silent assertion of power that left an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Meghan's reaction, measured as it was, revealed both resilience and awareness. In the midst of cameras, whispers, and instant analysis, she maintained her poise. She continued to engage gracefully with other attendees, positioning herself strategically to demonstrate both confidence and respect. Every movement was intentional, signaling that she understood the rules of engagement without showing any overt vulnerability. And yet, the refusal lingered, not just physically, but psychologically. It was a test, a subtle challenge to see whether Meghan could navigate the intricate web of influence without faltering. Insiders quickly noted the ripple effect. The refusal of a hug altered interactions across the room. Designers adjusted their greetings, stylists whispered advice to clients, and assistants recalibrated seating arrangements to reflect the new dynamics. A single gesture, almost invisible to an untrained eye, had reshaped the social terrain. Meghan's presence, once purely celebratory and glamorous, now carried a layer of tension and expectation. She was no longer just a royal or a celebrity. She was a participant in a delicate game of influence, observation, and subtle negotiation. Meanwhile, the media captured every nuance. Live feeds replayed the moment in slow motion, highlighting micro-expressions, subtle shifts in posture, and fleeting reactions from bystanders. Commentary exploded across platforms. Meghan snubbed by Anna Wintour. Fashion world in shock. Is this the beginning of a feud? The headlines were sensational, yes, but they also reflected the real stakes of the moment: influence, perception, and the fragile balance of power. Even within Meghan's immediate circle, reactions were swift and discreet. Assistants, security personnel, and advisors recognized the significance of the gesture and its potential impact on her broader public image. Strategies were recalibrated in real time: how to maintain composure, how to engage with other attendees, and how to leverage the media attention without escalating tension. Every decision was a chess move, every glance a calculated communication. And yet, for all the analysis, there remained an element of unpredictability. The refusal, while clearly deliberate, opened doors to multiple interpretations. Was it personal? Professional? A combination of both? And how would Meghan leverage or counteract the silent statement she had just received? These questions lingered in the air, unspoken yet potent, as the show began and the models took to the runway. For Meghan, the event was now more than fashion. It was a test of influence, perception, and resilience. The refusal of a hug had transformed a ceremonial greeting into a defining moment, one that would shape interactions, media narratives, and backstage dynamics throughout the evening. It was a reminder that in elite circles, gestures are never just gestures, and recognition is rarely given freely. And as the first models appeared under the dazzling lights, and the room's collective attention shifted to the runway, the refusal's ripple effect was still palpable. Conversations continued, alliances subtly shifted, and social dynamics recalibrated in real time. What had started as a simple greeting had evolved into a symbol, a narrative, and a cautionary tale, all captured in a fleeting moment that would dominate discussions for days to come. But backstage, away from cameras, the whispers intensified. Observers speculated not only about the refusal, but about its implications. Who would align with Meghan now? Which insiders would take sides? How would this influence future appearances, collaborations, and invitations? In this ecosystem, even the smallest act can trigger a cascade of consequences, and everyone present understood that tonight was a turning point, even if they did not yet know the full story. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The refusal of a hug, seemingly a brief and subtle gesture, sent shockwaves through the elite corridors of Paris Fashion Week. While the cameras focused on Meghan Markle and Anna Wintour, it was the ripple effect across the fashion elite that revealed the true magnitude of the moment. In a world where influence, status, and alliances govern every interaction, nothing goes unnoticed. And tonight, every whisper, every sideways glance, and every click of a camera was a testament to how a single act can recalibrate the balance of power. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly. Designers exchanged subtle nods behind their models. Stylists leaned in to discuss positioning and seating arrangements. Photographers adjusted their lenses, aware that a micro-expression could become tomorrow's headline. But the intensity of the reaction grew rapidly as the audience processed what had just occurred. The refusal of a hug was no longer just a social slight. It was a statement, and everyone wanted to interpret its meaning. The fashion elite operates on a complex lattice of respect, recognition, and subtle hierarchies. Approval from someone like Anna Wintour is coveted. Disapproval, even passive, is meticulously noted. For decades, insiders have understood that gestures, no matter how small, carry enormous weight. A handshake can signal inclusion, a nod can imply alignment, and a refusal, a subtle step back, can be devastating in its implications. Tonight, Meghan's interaction with Wintour became the centerpiece of this intricate social calculus. Conversations ignited instantly. "Did you see that?" a young designer whispered to an assistant. "It's deliberate. Anna is sending a message." Across the room, stylists and PR managers speculated about potential repercussions. Future invitations, collaborations, or editorial opportunities might now hinge on how Meghan navigated the fallout. The atmosphere, which had been energetic and celebratory just moments before, now carried an undercurrent of tension, speculation, and quiet strategizing. Journalists and fashion commentators, both on-site and monitoring the event remotely, began to analyze the encounter in real time. Some described it as a shocking breach of etiquette, while others framed it as a subtle power play emblematic of the hierarchies that govern elite fashion circles. Headlines were drafted even before the show had begun, capturing attention with phrases like "Meghan snubbed by Anna Wintour" and "Fashion World shocked by Duchess rebuff." These narratives, amplified by social media, ensured that the event's drama would not remain contained within the walls of the venue. Within the elite crowd, reactions varied widely. Some were sympathetic to Meghan, admiring her composure and grace in the face of a subtle public slight. Others nodded knowingly, as if recognizing a lesson in the unforgiving dynamics of high fashion. A few were visibly impressed by Wintour's calculated authority, appreciating the clarity of her unspoken hierarchy. Conversations moved quickly from the runway to analysis. Who would this affect? How would Meghan respond? And what shifts might occur in alliances across the industry? The dynamics were particularly complex because Meghan's presence was a double-edged sword. On one hand, her global recognition, media influence, and public profile were undeniable assets. Designers and PR teams understood that having her in the room increased visibility, created buzz, and potentially elevated the prestige of any event. On the other hand, her outsider status, royalty, and celebrity mingled in a realm that prizes insider status and historical pedigree, meant that traditional power players had to recalibrate their positions. Meghan's appearance was not merely a fashion statement. It was a test of influence, a disruption to the expected order. Allies and detractors alike took notice. Those who supported Meghan internally debated whether to signal solidarity subtly, while those wary of her influence monitored every micro-expression for signs of opportunity or misstep. Stylists adjusted seating arrangements discreetly to ensure their clients were positioned advantageously, while publicists quietly drafted contingency strategies in anticipation of media interpretation. Backstage and in the audience alike, the refusal of a hug had become a catalyst for reassessment, strategy, and careful observation. Even within the corridors of influence, subtle tensions arose. Some of the elite questioned Meghan's motives, wondering whether she had intended to assert power or simply remained unaware of the rules she was navigating. Others interpreted her poised response as evidence of intelligence and strategy, noting that her calm and graceful handling of the situation reflected a sophisticated understanding of elite social navigation. Across the room, whispers formed a chorus of speculation, analysis, and intrigue, punctuated by knowing glances and discreet murmurs. The impact extended beyond individuals to networks. The fashion elite is interconnected in a dense web of relationships, partnerships, and historical alliances. A subtle act can create cascading effects, shifting loyalties, altering invitations to future events, and influencing editorial decisions. Meghan's interaction with Wintour had become a focal point for this network, a single event through which every insider was recalibrating their social and professional strategies. It was an extraordinary demonstration of how influence operates invisibly yet decisively in elite circles. Meanwhile, social media amplified every subtle movement, gesture, and expression. Clips of the encounter circulated rapidly, dissected in slow motion, analyzed by influencers, journalists, and fans. Each frame became a talking point, each micro-expression a subject of debate. Memes, opinion pieces, and Instagram threads multiplied within minutes. The digital echo chamber magnified the backstage whispers, turning private reactions into global discussions. The moment transcended the room, becoming part of a worldwide narrative of influence, power, and the unseen rules that govern elite social spaces. Among designers and stylists, the scene provoked both admiration and envy. Some noted Meghan's poise as exemplary, a masterclass in strategic composure under pressure. Others, however, viewed her presence as disruptive, a challenge to established authority structures. These internal debates, while subtle, shaped decisions about collaboration, future events, and alliances. A single glance or gesture could signal endorsement or opposition, and the implications of these signals extended far beyond the evening's event. Media representatives on site, sensing the significance, documented the entire interaction with precision. Live feeds captured every second, while social media streams dissected body language and posture. Analysts speculated on the implications, offering interpretations ranging from diplomatic oversight to intentional power play. Backstage, publicists whispered advice: how to position statements, how to manage the narrative, how to ensure that perception aligned with strategic objectives. Every participant understood that a single act, a refusal, a glance, a smile, could become the defining moment of the evening, shaping conversations, coverage, and reputations. The tension was compounded by the duality of Meghan's role. She was at once a global celebrity, a former royal, and an influential public figure. Each role carried its own expectations, responsibilities, and scrutiny. Navigating the fashion elite's delicate hierarchies required not only grace, but acute awareness of unspoken rules. The refusal from Anna Wintour was both a test and a signal, a reminder of the invisible codes that govern recognition and influence, and a subtle warning that public perception and backstage alliances were deeply intertwined. In the end, the reactions of the fashion elite painted a picture of the complex social ecosystem Meghan had entered. Every gesture, glance, and whispered comment became part of a larger tapestry, revealing the intricate interplay of influence, hierarchy, and perception. The refusal of a hug had evolved into a symbolic event, a moment that would shape strategies, alliances, and reputations far beyond the immediate room. It was a lesson in power, subtlety, and resilience, one that would be analyzed, debated, and remembered long after the lights dimmed and the runway emptied. And yet, even as the room absorbed the drama, a new tension began to emerge. Behind the smiles, the polite gestures, and the carefully curated appearances, backstage observers noted subtle shifts, quick exchanges, furtive glances, and whispered reassessments. The refusal had set off a chain reaction that even the most experienced insiders could not fully predict. Questions swirled. Who would support Meghan? Who would distance themselves? And what long-term effects might this encounter have on future events, collaborations, and the unspoken power dynamics of the elite fashion world? And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The refusal of a hug was more than a fleeting moment. It was a crystallization of tension that had quietly been simmering for months, perhaps even years. For those who understand the unspoken codes of the fashion world, it was obvious that this gesture was layered, deliberate, and strategically timed. Meghan Markle, despite her global recognition and royal pedigree, had stepped into a realm where authority, hierarchy, and legacy reigned supreme. And Anna Wintour, the queen of fashion, operates in a domain where every gesture, every glance, and every expression communicates far more than words ever could. Backstage, insiders whispered about prior interactions between the two women. Some recalled moments from earlier events, where Meghan's rising prominence and media coverage had subtly unsettled Wintour's established dominion. Others spoke of professional friction, editorial choices, seating arrangements, and perceived overexposure in fashion circles that traditionally prized subtlety, consistency, and insider networks. The whispers painted a picture of underlying tension, a backdrop against which the refusal of a hug made perfect sense. It was not personal in the conventional sense, yet it carried a personal weight. Meghan, in her role as a public figure with both celebrity and royal status, inherently commands attention. Her presence brings global media focus, a factor that can amplify or overshadow other figures in the room. To Wintour, whose life and career are defined by precision, influence, and gatekeeping, this kind of attention can be both an asset and a threat. Refusing a hug was a controlled assertion of authority, a subtle reminder that celebrity alone does not equate to influence in this carefully structured ecosystem. Observers noted every micro-expression during the interaction. Wintour's slight step back, the controlled tilt of her head, the calm but deliberate repositioning of her body, all spoke volumes. To the untrained eye, it may have appeared like a minor social adjustment.